What is consciousness? The live stream of consciousness is on a quest to unravel the mystery of existence. Every episode, we ask the fundamental question that has captivated human minds for centuries. Is consciousness merely a product of our brains, or does it connect us to something greater? Explore the very fabric of our thoughts. Don't miss a moment. Expand your awareness and tap into the boundless potential that resides within you. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness.
Hello, and welcome to the live stream of consciousness. I've been practicing. I gotta try to get to do that as good as Jesse can do that. Well, welcome to the live stream of consciousness. I am Michael Zinn. It is Thursday, July 13th. Holy moly, halfway through July. We were halfway through the year when it was June. I couldn't believe we were there. Now we're almost approaching halfway through the summer already. Time is flying. I am excited for tonight's guest, although he's not sitting in the green room yet. I'm hoping he pops in there soon because it is 4 o'clock in the morning where he is. He is in Vienna. And my guest's name is RAFFAEL KÉMÉNCZY. He is a mystic, a shaman, a astrologer, a studier of all sorts of amazing things, and also very knowledgeable about, I would call it conspiracy theories and unexplained phenomena. He's just really, really deep into all of these things and can hold a really good discussion about all of my favorite stuff. I met him on The Fool's Journey, which is the other show that I do on Mondays with Brian Lahr, who is the Wizard of Oz. Some of you guys know him from this show, where we started talking to him, and then I started a show with him to show off his artwork and to basically learn the tarot. He has a tarot deck that he created. I'm getting a text. Maybe that's RAFFAEL. Oh, he's saying, when should I get there? I'm going to tell him to come now. So I just told him ASAP. In the meantime, I don't remember if I talked about it last time, but I did get an amazing special visit from the live stream of consciousness family, and that is, of course, Tim and Taryn. I might have shown this picture last week. If I did, I apologize, but it's always nice to show it again because there's lots of smiles and love happening there. And it was a great day and a great moment. I got to meet Taryn, who is Tim's son, who we had an actual gender reveal for on the live stream of consciousness. Tim was a viewer of the show before he even got married to his beautiful wife, Sonia, and she got pregnant, and we had a gender reveal, and that was Taryn, and he came here. I met him. Wheelie, I know you were early tonight. Welcome. I've also been talking to some really cool people on StreamYard, so I'm excited about some things that are coming up. You might have seen it on this channel because they're StreamYard based, and they basically also hold on, I'm getting a message at the same time, producing the show and being on it at the same time. Nope, it is now. Nope, now he's saying, is it in 1 hour? So I guess the time difference is screwing him up. Oh, and you guys can see that right there. I'm sharing my screen with you. I shouldn't be doing that. But actually, let me share that again, because these are the guys I was just talking about. We met on this app called Collab, which is a StreamYard addition to StreamYard that they just created, where you can meet podcast guests. You can get to be a guest on a podcast. It's a really cool community thing that's starting up. There's a few websites that are doing that now, and you can find a podcast that, has a subject that you like talking about, or I can find guests who like talking about what I like talking about. But anyway, I met the guys from the Q4U podcast, Rob and Luke, and they had me on their show spontaneously, and it was awesome. And they said, hey, we know this other guy, George. He was on our show. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to collab with him, too. And we just all decided to get together and go live spontaneously. And the conversation is amazing. So check that out. as it develops, I will keep you guys posted. I just told what's his face, RAFFAEL, to come on the show. So hopefully he'll pop up in the green room shortly and join. I don't know who else is out there, but welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are new to this show, seeing me from the Q for You podcast or from George's podcast, welcome, and please subscribe. I was thinking about how I didn't really start doing this for likes or views or anything like that. I just love to do it. It's my happy place, and that doesn't mean I wouldn't like to grow the show and get more viewers and be able to do more things. So share it if you can share it. Tell your friends, all of that stuff. I don't even know how to promote myself. But anyway, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I am going to see what RAFFAEL is saying to me, if he's probably getting dressed or something. I'm just going to let him know I'm here waiting. I don't know how that comes off out there in the show, but that's life, you know. I'm producing the show and I'm on the show. I have been producing Grace Gorella's show, which is really awesome, where I don't have to worry so much about being on stage and talking and keeping you guys occupied. I can just kind of operate it, and we actually do a live call-in show. So she's a psychic medium, and she takes live phone calls like Dear Abby kind of used to, you know, my boyfriend, he's cheating on me, or this or that or the other thing. And she gives a psychic reading right on the show live. So that's been a great thing as well. But I know RAFFAEL is here now. He's in the green room. So I've introduced him already as a shaman, a mystic, a studier of many things, astrology and all of that, and even some more critical things that I want to talk about. So welcome to the show, RAFFAEL KÉMÉNCZY. How are you doing?
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Michael. Sorry for the delay. You know, there's always a fun mix-up with the time zones, but we're
no
here.
Problem. I love this so much because this is when my show becomes international. And not only that, but I feel like the topic that I talk about, spirituality and consciousness and all of that stuff, the fact that you're on the other side of the earth, you know, right now, and technology is connecting us and we can share this moment, you know what I mean? That's really cool. So I love that. So welcome to the live stream of consciousness. It's good to finally have you. I was explaining that we met on the Fool's Journey through our mutual friend Brian Lahr, who is the Wyzard, and Ninja Kitty is welcoming you to the show. And just that I became fascinated with your ability to have these conversations about so much cool stuff, whether it be metaphysical topic or astrological topic or conspiracy theories or whatever it might be. You seem to really have a good handle on that, and I can't wait to get into that conversation. But we got to take care of some business first, and those are the standard live stream of consciousness questions that I ask. And the first one being, sounds kind of big, like a big chunk to take off, but it's painless and quick. And that is, what is consciousness?
What is not?
There you go. I think that was probably the quickest and most concise, least amount of words to describe something that is so deep. But that answer is really deep. Awesome. Very, very good job, RAFFAEL. I knew you wouldn't disappoint. That is amazing. Cool. So well, then let's get right to the second question, which is I'd like to ask you to share a story, a moment, a memory of when you realized that there was more to being three-dimensional than, you know, just kind of what you're taught as you're growing up.
That's a great story, and PSA, how should I say, only for adult audiences, not because of any, you know, anything explicit, simply because this is, I guess, the opposition to reefer madness you could ever get. So the story is actually recounted in one of my essays on my website, so it's very public, but, you know, who's reading anymore? In the essay called a shift in perception, if anyone is interested, because of course, you know, these, especially if it's more of a sudden realization, it can be a quite shocking thing. So I would have to say that for many years, I had been already researching, religion, philosophy. I was asking myself all these questions you have since a child, and if you don't just accept any answer you're given, then you somehow keep researching, right? And you read philosophy, you read psychology, all of that. So I want to say I was mentally prepared. But then what actually happened is, through synchronicity, dare I say, I was never even really drinking alcohol. But then through synchronicity in my early 20s, I got around to a friend or a party, however you want to call it, and we were smoking weed of all things. And maybe we did this for the 5th or 6th time. I was, trying to deal with the energies that, came up through it. And I wasn't really, clear on that for some time. But very quickly, it happened that I was at a party. We were smoking, I mean, in the US, it's easy to talk about it because it's mainly legal in so many places. Of course, here we have to ask also, why is that happening and what are they doing to the genetics and so on? But that's another subject. So I was smoking that, and then suddenly the best way I could describe it and try to describe it to my friends was like, guys, it's the Matrix. So what happened is my field of view was kind of like skewed, like 45% to the left side from my perspective. And at least in that moment, it felt to me as if this is the proof that there must be something like an astral body, because it felt to me, I'm not looking through my eyes, whether that's true or not, whether I was just dizzy, whatever, but that was my subjective experience. And also I could kind of see in front of my mind's eye how time and space are shattering, and also more specifically how my consciousness is connecting through and to this body or this reality through layers of definition. You can imagine ultimate source, then you put a first frame around it, which is the frame. Probably there are many before that. Let's say we start with a duality or something, or polarity. And then at some point you would come to, let's say, Earth, for lack of a better term, then human. And then you could choose, your parents, your social situation, and all these many more things. And these are all just, layers of definition, like windows, definitions we are looking through, we are narrowing through. But that ultimately the signal of our consciousness comes from the place that's farthest back, which is completely unconditioned, which is just the one. That, and then I had another view, and then I'm finishing up that story. I felt as if I'm floating over the earth or something, but I could look down and I could actually see a tree. And the tree was, in a sense, maybe in this life or in another life, the accumulated quote unquote wisdom I had. So even I got a graphical representation of having some kind of a tie back, to this reality. And all I did from that point on was not asking so much anymore, is consciousness and all of these things, are they real? Is there something to the core tenets of religion in the most positive sense? But then I started approaching from the other way around, which of course makes research a lot easier, still being skeptical about everything. But if you have some direct experience yourself, and I only got more as time went on. Yeah, so I would say this was definitely
that was the moment,
turning point.
Yeah, totally. What's up to Crypto Alchemist? What up, family?
Yo, Bernie.
What's up, Bernie? Welcome. Hit that like button, everyone. Bernie, while you're here, why don't you subscribe? If you subscribe and tell me you did, I'll ring my bell if I could. Oh, yeah, my bell's over here. I'll ring it. What's up? Well, you brought a lot of friends, Raphael. Awesome. Logan Rothrods is here. Welcome to the live stream. I'm excited. I have an international audience. This is great. And
they're probably American, but it's fine.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine too. But they're drawn by your international presence.
No, sorry. Bernie is Canadian, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, there we go. International, like I was saying. And Tim is earlier I brought up a picture of Tim. Tim is in Brazil. So it's always international when he's watching. And he actually is in the United States now, and he came for a visit. So it was awesome. I just shared a picture of him. But so you said something. I just want to hit on one question on what you said. That's a great story. It makes so much sense to me. But you said something that I want you to elaborate on if you can. Jilly's out there too. What's up, Jilly? She's saying, hola, Raphael. And that is, you said you felt like you experienced time and space shattering. Like, what can you describe that? Like, I mean, I guess in my mind, I can picture it in my own way, but what did that feel like or look like, or I guess feel like to you?
I mean, in that particular moment, I think the few frames I got, and it wasn't like a full-on vision. It was like almost like augmented reality, halfway seeing it in your mind's eye. I'm not exactly sure, but it was almost like, in this way I would describe it now, that this was a situation where also, of course, through the preparation, through set and setting, and then the catalyst, I kind of allowed the conduit to my own higher self to be a tiny bit widened. And already I was changing my diet and so on, not making recommendations just for my own sake, right? So I was directed towards it. And then I felt like through this, it could just reach out more. And that's what I experience with any type of catalyst, starting from meditation. It's just broadening that access to the higher self, or makes that communication more conscious, mainly. And so then the image I just got, I think in that moment literally was, I don't know, some chart representation or something. And I think really like a hammer that was shattering it. So it wasn't like a grand revelation, really just like, oh, look, here's the comic book version of what you need to understand right now.
Right. No, that I was just curious because, I've certainly had an experience or two that I've tried to articulate, and sometimes it's hard. You could say, oh, I was bathed in light, or, like you said, you were floating above earth, and you realize that was a connection to some sort of astral body, because that's really kind of, that's a very straightforward metaphor right there, right? Like your out of body experience, kind of a standard way that you would understand it in earth terms, right? And in
Right,
human
exactly.
terms. Yeah. So I mean, I love that. I think that's great. And I guess that can bring us into now talking about you and who you are, and you get to take the stage because you're so fascinating. And I'm imagining, you said, you're smoking weed, but I think it goes way beyond that, right? I mean, there's other plant medicines and things involved, or is that it for you? I mean, psychedelics at all? Do you have anything what are your thoughts about that?
Yes, there is a whole lot to say about it. In my particular case, I would really say that the core realization was brought about by that catalyst. And actually, if I would contend, if you really can feel that idea of the unity of consciousness and connectedness of all things, and then logically follow through with it, there's nothing more you need. Divine synchronicity and your higher self will guide you, which it always does anyways, but then you can consciously play with that. And I don't think you actually need anything else. So I wouldn't be one who says, oh, you need all these plant medicines or so on. But I guess the thing to go to best, just because it's incredibly potent and now also has become popular, which has its own caveats, of course, is ayahuasca. I'm not certain if we spoke about this before, but just from the experiences I had and what I could glean from speaking with friends is simply that really you can, in many different ways, choose to go to psychotherapy for many years, or you can do it quicker. There's other substances that can do it too, maybe even many different ones, but it's really always about, how ready are you yourself, how prepared you are.
Froze up over here. I don't know if you...
I am still here.
Oh,
One, two, three.
I see it now. I disappeared. I don't know what everybody else saw, but you're back. So a little glitch in the matrix. All good. Yes. We can handle that.
Yes, that's part of the game.
Yeah.
So that simply, you actually can accelerate many things, with many different substances, but it's really about how ready are you, number one, in terms of preparedness, and number two, how ready are you to let go, which is maybe even more important.
Sure.
And in that frame, I just see incredible potential. However, it's also clear that, especially now, because there is not enough education about these things, I'm also not one advocating, like people think, oh, it's the one solution, but but in my view, it's definitely part of the solution. And I'm pretty sure that's also the reason why it's there. And that's also why all, alphabet soups are involved with it ever since Woodstock. I'm not sure if you know about that story.
No, I don't. I'd like to hear about that, but hang on, hold that one. Alphabet soup, write it down.
Yes. So, yeah, if you'd like me to say anything more specific, I gladly will. But that's like my main idea.
Okay. No, that's great, and I love that you use the word catalyst, because and I love that kind of, I guess you say it's a disclaimer, kind of what you're saying, like, hey, you're not one to advocate that you need any of this stuff to get to a certain point, but there certainly are, they are avenues, Let's just call it that way.
And maybe I will share one more thing, just as we're on the topic of DMT with ayahuasca. And of course, he would also have to question, why is it so incredibly popular? You know, who is a shaman, who is not? You cannot forego any of that. You need to do your own due diligence. So even if you would enter that, you know, with, you know, maybe even go to the jungle or something, it's really up to your own spiritual discernment, whom you even trust to accompany you in that. So I just want to say, you're never really let off the hook. Yeah. And even if you have a very good experience, for example, with ayahuasca, you're also not let off the hook, because you're the one who has to let go, which is hard or which is easy, you know, depending. One more thing I would like to share, just because it is incredibly potent in a way I wouldn't have imagined. This was recommended to me many years ago, but I only really came across it last year. And again, I'm just mentioning it because we're on the topic of DMT, which is a substance called 5-MeO-DMT, also naturally occurring, oftentimes, as I understand, I want to say harvested from frogs, but from what I understand, they don't need to die for it. So it's just a super potent version of that.
Wow.
And not only my experience, but again, depending on the things I mentioned before, is in terms of frequency, in terms of everything I experienced. We could, you know, say weed is here, and then you have mushrooms and other things, and then you have ayahuasca, and then you have 5-MeO-DMT. And the interesting part about that is, for me, and also from some experiences I had heard, there's not even any visuals anymore, because with ayahuasca you get all these visions and the processing and so on. But with this, at least for me, it was almost like the frequency is so high, all that remains is a feeling. And I just want to share that, because there I even told the shaman, even still during the session, I was laughing, you know, and fiddling around a bit, because it's very intense, at least for me. For my body, was very intense, but very exciting and fun as well. But I literally told him, like, this is the cheat code, you know. And we could say many things are cheat codes, but for someone who is ready, and then again you will synchronistically attract the proper shaman and so on to do that, I wouldn't recommend just doing it alone, because it is very, very strong. But it just felt like a great holiday, you know, just for a few minutes. The whole, not that you cannot access your body and don't know that you're here, but in a way the focus is completely removed from it. And when the focus from all these definitions I mentioned earlier through the layers is removed, all that remains is unity and unconditional love, which, as so many mystics anyhow say, is the core of reality, or poets. And that's just amazing that there is a way. You experience it every day. You experience it by breathing in and breathing out. You experience it by meditating. But here it's almost like you're locked into that frequency for a time. And that's just incredibly relaxing.
No, it's I certainly would imagine it's a different level of intensity than just meditating. But I think the cool thing is when you can make the connection between the experiences that you have meditating and those experiences, and see how they relate, you know what I mean, and almost say, hey, well, I can kind of do this through meditation. You're actually doing it to a certain level, you know, you're connecting to that source energy, you know, on, you know, in a three-dimensional way. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about with you, again, because I find these things interesting, and you probably know a lot more than I do about it. And this is related exactly to what we're saying, and also opens up the door to so many tangents. And that is the theory that I have heard about mushrooms specifically kind of being a trace of some sort of alien entity that actually has a consciousness, and that's what's happening, is you're actually communicating with this alien consciousness, or this other consciousness, this, maybe like you said, it's just this avenue to connect. It's a conduit to connect your consciousness to the collective consciousness, or to let's not say the collective consciousness, let's say a collective consciousness, because there's probably, in the way I would imagine it, many collective consciousnesses that make up the collective consciousness, right? Which would only make sense in the way.
I hope so, or it would be very cluttered, you know.
Right. And you actually sent me something, an interesting thing that I haven't really gotten all the way through, and maybe we should talk privately, and you can help me get through it, regarding my connection that I mentioned to you that I have with Orion. And I feel like that's all part of this conversation. So let's go back to the beginning of that whole statement. What are your thoughts on mushrooms and the possibility that they are specifically here for that reason?
Yes. So Before I answer that, I'll just say one term, which is brain hemisphere synchronization. From all that I understand, anything and everything we do that appears to be effective actually is harmonizing and activating the brain hemispheres, you know, the light, however you want to call it, the bridge, you know. And yeah, so that's the one thing, just to understand what the result actually is, or what the gauge is. With the whole alien story, there's a few links I'd have to share now, but ever since, and I'll just drop the name here, everyone kindly go research yourself. If you're this deep in the rabbit hole already, you know, I won't surprise you too much with this anymore. There's a guy by the name of Douglas Dietrich, who's incredibly interesting. I won't repeat all his claims right here, but he's just suggesting that oftentimes, maybe I had brought this up on the Fool journey also, is that we never know if we're in a cargo cult or not. Meaning that we can never be certain with the phenomenon we see and that are labeled alien, what they actually are, until we can really verify them independently. So until that, everything's a great story. Even the nice channeling stories, which I very much enjoy, are in a way just stories until we can independently verify them. So that's why, at least at this point, I'm very wary of the term alien, also because it simply legally means foreigner, which could then be extended to many different ideas. And also, as we are not, I am not exactly certain, at least, how large this plane actually is, and whether there's things, you know, beyond places we're not supposed to go, like the Antarctic. So then again, the question would be, what is alien? What does that mean conceptually? And just in terms of, from what I can observe, the mushrooms, they're, as I understand, the mycelium, the greatest organism on the planet that is enmeshed with everything. So if there is even the idea of, you know, frequency resonance through, you know, the molecules, that the idea that if I consume a part of it, and if you ever think about it, it's not just any part you're consuming. I'm not going into this further, but everyone can think of this themselves. Let's say it's the most potent part, or it is the fruit, let's say. And if there is a resonance connection, then it would just make sense that it connected to some type of a collective Gaian consciousness, just from the fact that these mushrooms are everywhere. You know, just if I interpret it on a very simple symbolic level, I'm aware that Terence McKenna brought the idea of the stoned ape theory, I believe, which says that, you know, the apes, and maybe the mycelium was seeded by aliens, whatever this means, the apes ate it. I'm not so sure about that. Yeah, but yeah, here we open up even more rabbit holes. I hope
But I mean, it's certainly an interesting theory, the stoned ape theory, and there are things that you can say, oh, that kind of makes sense, and then there are things you're like, well, you know, who knows? Like you said, who knows until we can really prove it, right? I mean,
this, and it appears more as if there have been phases of quite fast or drastic changes, because as you were maybe aware, the issue with evolution, for example, with woodpeckers and all kinds of other animals, is if they ever had to develop there in stages, you're dead after half a generation. You know, you need to have something that's befitting. You maybe cannot afford to evolve over thousands of years if there is a drastic change. But also, for example, you may know of, I think his name is Jason Breshaw's of Archaic's channel. He's talking about something called the Phoenix events and the vapor canopy, which I cannot 100% repeat now because I haven't deeply gotten into it. But he's also suggesting some atmospheric changes, and that because of those changes, even potentially very large humans, for lack of a better term, then bore much smaller children. It's just an idea, but it also seems to me, from what I understand, that there have been more drastic shifts, and the gradual linear granular evolution, in this way it is described, seems more unlikely, although we certainly do have that within one life epigenetically. So determining what I believe, what I eat, and how I act, there is actually a connection. And Bruce Lipton, I think, explains this really well, the connection between belief systems, a spiritual concept or mental concept, and your actual genetic expression, which then can have an immense effect not only on your health, but your overall energy levels, and who knows what other abilities that may be unlocked. Because although we have a genetic code, which parts of the code and how they are being read is entirely dependent on the programming we determine within this life. That is for certain. And that is the whole idea of epigenetics.
Wow. Holy moly, Raphael. I have to unpack so much of what you said. It's like this is why I love talking to you, is because I can feel your words. They're like seeds that are germinating in my brain, and I can feel them germinating, and I can feel them starting to take root, and I just can't see them right now. They haven't sprouted yet. So it's like that, okay, something exciting is going to happen. I love it. I love the knowledge that you're sharing, and it's just so interesting. Wow, where do I go next with my line of questioning on this? So we were talking about the possibility of these things being left here by aliens and connecting us to aliens. You've obviously had some experience with these things. I mean, so I know there was a point where there's a lot of stories of these experiences that involve entities, right? And again, I agree with you. I'm not going to use the word aliens, right? So, all right, this is what I was thinking before. What I was thinking before was, I think a lot of humanity. I mean, I know for me, I'm at this point in my life where I'm exploring things, like kind of like you. I don't think I've dug as deep as you have, but let's just talk about the idea of seeing myself, seeing a reflection of myself in others, right? That's something that's come to me, right? And it's such an amazing plateau, right, in this journey, because it definitely feels like a step towards unconditional love, as you start to able to see people and not understand why other people are like picking on other people. Like, why does everybody insist on like talking about what they don't like about other people, or what this person's trying to do, or what that person's trying to do, instead of just focusing on being themselves, right? I mean, that's what I think the key is. So
This, and always ask yourself, how would you talk to your own child, if you were the perfect parent? And this is the way you should quote unquote can talk to everyone, even adults, because most still are children.
Totally. That, you know what, and I don't think I've ever discussed this with you, but you opened up a little door in my mind to one of my thoughts about unconditional love, and that is, and it's something that helped me, and that is, and I don't have a child. I never had a child, but I have nephews and nieces. I have a sister that was born when I was 10 or 11 years old, so I experienced some things there, and that is looking in the mirror at yourself. I always felt like unconditional love was looking at yourself as if you were looking at your child. Like the same way I would imagine that I would look at my child if I had one. I feel like I would only see the purest love. And that's what you should see in the mirror. And when I made that realization, I didn't see that in the mirror. And I think that's what made me realize it. I was like, I don't think I love myself. I didn't know, you know what I mean, that I didn't love myself. Even that is a plateau, right? And I worked on it, and there came a point where I was able to look in the mirror and feel that. And it was super important. It was a super plateau. But then, as I said, moving forward in the last bunch of years, I really am able to, and it's not 100% of the people that I run into, but a good 90-95% of the people I run into, I see some sort of reflection of myself in, and that's a real for me, that's a real happy way to exist. It makes life easier, in some ways. So the reason I'm talking about that and all of that is kind of setting this up. Like, I think a lot of people don't even understand what I'm talking about, right? You do, but I think there's a lot of people who have yet to get there. And
The beginner level word for this would be empathy.
yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are starting to experience that and understand that, which is amazing. And I think that's part of why people, why I'm here to do something like this, to help people understand that. You know what I mean? But anyway, so we were talking about, and again, I don't like to use the word, like, these alien entities. Imagine being able to see your reflection in these alien entities. And I'm imagining that's almost like what a DMT experience is.
Well, that's a good question. So many people report, through using different substances, of how do you call it, mechanical elves and so on. There are certain recurring themes. I even had individuals in contact with the DMT catalyst without knowing anything about it, telling me about fools on the first level. So this is incredibly interesting also with the tarot, how especially on the astral realms, even if you don't know any details about it, certain archetypes just keep showing up. So it's entertaining, and I'm really looking forward when this can be, how should I say, more open and just people more self-determined and understanding of how to deal with these things, how we can really research and maybe map those realms as well. Maybe that's a futile effort to some
And they're
extent.
working on, I hear they're doing a lot of experimenting with trying to map the DMT realm, quote unquote.
Yeah, I always want to know who's funding it, but overall, that's certainly, it should be open source effort for sure.
Right.
So that is, sorry, I want to come back to your question. Yeah, right. So basically, let's say simply seeing your reflection also in things that appear different. So the most basic Star Trek idea of this would be, how about an entity that is gaseous? How about an entity that is just frequency? How about whatever? And I'm certain we can. And then where it gets really interesting is to think about what are the things, for whatever reason, you may still be judging, and then also see your reflection in that. And it doesn't mean you have to be like that,
Right.
but just to understand how it is part of the entire mechanism as well, because only through that we can get out of this whole, victim, perpetrator, savior, or the fight, flight, paralysis responses, and really get into this observer mode again. Because as all the mystics say, I would claim that just because that's the most logical thing, and also direct experience from what I can glean. We are not our bodies, and if you really imbue yourself in that feeling, also it would technically remove all fears, all ego-based fears of losing anything, reputation, money, success, because it's just like you're playing a video game. So you're just playing for whatever high score or achievement or whatever it is that you set yourself up for. But none of your greater existence is in any way, shape, or form really dependent upon this life. Although we can do many great things, especially, I would say, again, if we realize that, because it makes it kind of super important, but also it doesn't determine your actual existence. At least in German, they always like to say, when you lose your company, or you're losing your existence. I mean, what? That's just the next abstracted layer of it, as if I was an accounting book or something,
Right.
Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, totally. I want to grab my notebook here for a second and write some things I don't want to forget. I just want to acknowledge a friend of mine in the chat room. William Conway's out there. What's up, Willie? Good to see you. The massiveness of what he's saying is so hard to wrap one's heads around. It means there's so much we have so little understanding about. Absolutely. I mean, that's a standard cliche. The more I learn, the more I know less. I know less the more I learn. And it's just because you're aware of how much you don't know as you learn. And I'm starting to not see a who in the mirror, but a what. And it's wonderful work to have happening. Yeah, it really is. Fear is bogus. And that actually leads me to kind of the question I was writing down. So with some of the philosophies that I feel like you're sharing here, do you feel like there is merit in this 3D human existence to raising the vibration as a collective to try to heal other people who you feel like you can help?
I mean, in a very honest way, I would say it's about whatever you want to make it about. Because if it is true that ultimately there is one consciousness, however you define it, everything happens within that one consciousness. Nothing can be lost. Any progress is completely arbitrary.
Sure.
But from a human perspective, and simply from the basic, I don't know, installation that I have in terms of software, hardware, you want a certain temperature, you like to be around nice people and so on, you like to enjoy yourself, then definitely there is merit to it. Because if we don't do it, we see how far things have gotten, by ignoring trauma and all of that. So just from a very immediate, direct human experience point of view, I would say there's ultimate merit for it. Firstly, because you can improve your own mood by, being in a good mood, helping people. I'm sure there's plenty of studies on this, why this is so great, pet a dog and feed a child and I don't know, entertain some adults, you know,
Right.
being on a show. So that's the immediate thing. Then there's the systems theory perspective that, you know, everything is connected, even on a psychological communications type of view. Even as we discovered, I put on a show with a 1K channel and some of your friends suddenly show up, you know, so
Right.
that's the other great thing. And
That's
then there's the spiritual aspect too, which is, yeah, the world is your reflection. So it's just, then it becomes a very logical, not non sequitur, but it's a nothing to be contemplated further if there is a direct correlation. Of course, I will do my best to have a quote unquote positive impact on my environment, because that's the resonance field which I embed myself in, and which is also then reflecting back to me. So yeah.
Yeah, totally interesting. So now my mind is going, and I'm thinking about kind of my own experiences lately, because yes, I would also advocate for, you know, kind of the high vibrational feelings, you know, company and love and laughter and enjoying music and things like that. But there is a part of me that I feel like also kind of has compassion for concepts that I don't relate to, that I feel like are evil. You know what I mean? Like, I can remember growing up and just being like, I don't believe in religion, but I do believe in, you know, good and evil, and even things like scam emails. You know, I'm like that. Like, how could somebody send a scam email? They must be aligned with evil, right? Because they're just, you know, whatever it was. That was kind of a representation of it to me. But now, in kind of my state of love and what I call unconditional love. And again, it's an ongoing process to learn how to really fully be that. But I do feel like I there's a part of me that has compassion for concepts like somebody who, a serial killer, let's say, who, or let's take it less extreme, somebody who is just miserable, right? Who I would encounter, and I would be like, oh, I really want to help this person, and I would try to help this person and make them see things. Oh, it doesn't need to be so bad, and they just don't want to do it. And so I've realized, like, some people need to exist like that, because that is, like you said, that's a part of the whole consciousness. Like, you know, as much as there is the light, there is the dark, and you can't, it's not about the light versus the dark and who's going to win, because they need to coexist.
This, although at the same time, I would say there is something, at least for each parallel reality, like yours, mine, everyone watching, there is like a collective frequency in a sense. It can also change depending on where you move. Mostly it's your own state, you know, you're always in your own room is one saying, and I would agree with that. You are always in your own room, and in your own reality.
Yeah.
But I would still say, at least for me, the illusion of progress seems valid enough in terms of like aligning yourself, and therefore your universe is holographically aligning with your values. So I would say having that attitude very much has an effect. But one of the lessons also includes, of course, one of the most important ones is the, how you call it, inviolable, I'm sorry, I don't know the right word, of free will. It's inviolable.
Invaluable, yeah, invaluable.
It's invaluable, but also it cannot be changed in any way, shape, or form. It should not be changed. It is sacred, let's say. There is a particular term which is not coming up right now.
Okay.
But this is referring to the idea that some people, for whatever reason, they choose to remain in whatever state, you know? So part of it can also be having the compassion of realizing the most compassionate thing I can do is wish you farewell. Because what I'm offering is not what you want to experience right now, for whatever reason it may be. Although, of course, I would also contend that many individuals, given the right offer and conditions and circumstance, very much would open to that. And if we organize society and our own lives differently, I'm certain that there would be a great change at the same time. But part of that process also includes leaving those who want to remain somewhere else there where they want to remain. So just as we can have the free will to progress or to change, that is also, you know, a part of the game.
Totally. And Tim is out there, and Tim, I'm sorry to hear what you're saying, because you are such a warrior. He says, I believe it, but I truly hope we can heal that way. Since I had a neck and spine MRI and was told I would just have to deal with the pain as it would surgery would only make it worse, which is unfortunate. But that is actually kind of relating to what I was thinking in my mind. So what I was thinking in my mind was the idea of people who are quick to say things like, there is no God, because how could God let babies die from cancer? Things like that. And I kind of understand, the simple interpretation of that, right? But I have seen way too many times people who have had situations like that in life, and it has affected their life in such tremendous ripples. You know what I mean? Like people who have, had, I know a woman who had her son die from an overdose, and she created this organization that when you go to one of these meetings of all of these people who have lost their sons and daughters from overdose, and you feel the amount of love that they feel for each other, it's palpable, and you see the smiles on their faces through this horrible tragedy. That there's a collective vibration happening. That they've experienced that trauma, and didn't say, well, why would God do this to me, but took it and said, okay, this is for me to learn and grow how to love unconditionally and get through that experience. So what do you think of that? Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. And there is one, this is actually, I'm stealing from Bashar or repeating, he calls it rubber band analogy. So the idea that the deeper you go into the negative, the farther you can fling yourself into the positive. Mm-hmm. And I would say, at least from a polarity point of view, this appears correct enough. And even, I guess, from mainstream psychology or mysticism, shamanism, they always say, the one who has overcome their own illness or trauma is the one who is the best healer, because they've been through it even within this life. So I think that's obvious, let's say. And again, in terms of why everything happens that can possibly happen, is because, imagine you have a computer mainframe with unlimited capacity. You're going to run every simulation you possibly can. So everything is part of it that you can possibly conceive of, just because you can. If, again, there is ultimately only one consciousness, I can still set up games within it and say, here I want to achieve that, here I want to change that, here I want to do that, or pretend to be in that perspective. But overall, it's all contained within the one mainframe. Yeah. Nothing is lost. And just, I don't know, maybe more experience is gained.
I love that perspective. That's a great perspective. So one of the guys I've been talking to through StreamYard collab, his name is George. He lives in Hawaii. He's got a great podcast called the True Life Podcast, and he talks a lot about the psychedelic experience and plant medicine and consciousness, and also great things that I love to talk about. He says he's curious to get your opinion on what is happening exactly during a high dose experience. I like that question.
Yeah, so I can only speak from limited experience, because there is so many different pathways and so many different types of psychedelics, many of which, again, should only be used if one knows what one is doing, ideally, and is in the very loving field, I guess, is the most important thing, a loving place for oneself, and, with other individuals to assist if necessary, or shamans. I would just refer back to the 5-MeO-DMT, also called Bufo experience, because for me this was the most intense, even though it's very short. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's about dosage, but it's about, again, the way you're set up, and this then determines what frequency you can achieve. Because also many people doing ayahuasca, all they do is puke. They say they had no experience, it was boring, they just felt bad, And I can only imagine that this is because it's your contribution as well and your setup. So it's not about the dosage, but the frequency. And I would say the highest frequency I consciously experienced was in a waking state was with 5-MeO-DMT. And all that was left for me was, as I said, simply the feeling of unconditional love and connectedness.
You said that
very
was
intense.
Not a visual experience at all. It was just,
there was nothing much left. I had a few fragments of mental constructs that I my ego deliberately pushed in, because it always likes to comment and it's pretty strong, but basically, in terms of default setting that was enabled in that state, there was no definition, basically. And if there is no definition, there is no limitation, there is no separation. So all that remains is unity and the unconditional love that is, this ineffable thing we seem to talk about, But those that direct themselves towards it, they will understand what we're
I
referring to.
love that I understand what you're saying, but I have no idea what it would feel like. You know what I mean? It's like I couldn't feel that at all. Tim is out there. Tim says most of the best things that happened in my life only happened right after I went through my worst times, which is, so a lot of times how it works. And William is asking, do you think you can overdo it? For instance, if I do a high frequency meditation every day, I get disoriented. I usually only do it 4 or 5 days in a row if not meditating in that way. I mean, I think and I'm going to answer first, and then I'd love to hear what you think. But I think, like kind of like you were saying, it's really where you're at and where you meet it. I mean, you can do it because you think, oh my God, I'm looking for the answer, and I think right there, that's the wrong thing, right? If you're looking so hard, it's going to make it harder to find. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you got to be
Possible.
Yeah, I feel like, for me personally, ayahuasca is something that I'm very intrigued about. DMT, I haven't done it because I feel like if I'm going to, I'll know. I'll be like, okay, it's time. I'm ready. I'm ready to do
Oh,
it.
of course. This is the main thing, to always trust yourself, no matter, because that's the big issue with any religion, any hierarchy, almost any problem we have in society today, is the lack of self-direction.
Right.
So
and there's one answer for everybody. You know what I mean? Everybody's answer is different, right?
Exactly. That's what I want to express with that. Exactly.
Sorry, go
yes,
for it.
Yes. So, William, thanks for your question, but basically go with your gut, and you will realize what the best pathway is for you. And everyone can be overdone, I would say, just like physical training. And then it also depends overall, what is the best state, that I'm completely blissed out and can't relate to reality, or that I can most effectively live the life I choose to live right now and have the experience I want to have, whatever this may be exactly. So any judgment or any scale we put, even though I also like doing those things, is, in my view, completely arbitrary.
Right. And that's awesome, because I think that directly relates to this next question, and also gives me the opportunity to introduce the other great guys that I've been talking to. The Q for You podcast, Rob and Luke have a great podcast. They're two friends. And I've been saying this, and I could be wrong, correct me. It's probably Rob out there, but I've been saying one guy's in Ohio and the other guy's in Oklahoma, and I don't remember if those are the actual states, but they met on a job site. They became friends, and they have a great podcast. They talk about all sorts of cool stuff, and we've all been kind of conversing. But the question is this a situation where you have to believe it's working to achieve, which I think is a very fair and great question.
Yes, I would say it depends what you believe consciously, but it even much more depends, of course, what you believe unconsciously. So what beliefs you hold on to unconsciously, because the beliefs are actually the limiters on your reality.
Mm-hmm.
So if you absolutely don't believe it, it's possible it's not gonna work. Although, yeah. So again, I would say it rather depends on what you believe subconsciously, which can also be made conscious, than on what you believe superficially, if that makes sense, what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah,
totally. No, I think again, and that's part of the whole philosophy of, you drive the ship, man. You know what I mean? You decide what your experience is going to be, and Q for You is saying, yes, Rob, I believe so. It's Ohio and Oklahoma. It's the 2 O's. That's how I remember it. If that's I got it right, that's great, because I'll use that to remember it. True Life George is saying he hears the Q for You podcast is epic. So I've got a bunch of people who are supporting each other in my chat room, which is great. Thanks.
Very good.
I love that. And you also, I do want to talk about a couple things, but I also want to promote you. So let me ask you one more question, and then we'll talk about your podcasts and all the things that you do, which I believe can be found on your site, which is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. And that is shaman. I would love your definition of what is a shaman. because I feel like a lot of people who go to take ayahuasca, all of a sudden that's what they want to do. That's what they want to be. They become shaman. I feel like I've known a couple of people in my life. You are one of them, and Brian is another one who kind of exhibit certain properties that I would think a shaman has, as far as certain understandings and their way to express those understandings. And of course, with Brian, it's the way he can express his telekinetic abilities with his magical effects and things like that. That's just amazing to see. But what exactly is a shaman? Like, what's your definition of that?
So I think there's 100 different definitions. The first thing that comes to my mind is someone who can consciously walk or have a perception for quote unquote both worlds, which actually are one and the same world, which does not have this strong artificial separation that, especially in the West, we're being indoctrinated into. And then ideally has, whatever either ancestral lore, heritage, or other type of insight. I'm actually not a very big fan of like these traditionalist ideas, because I can tell you even shamans coming from the middle of South America have already been Catholicized, and not for the better, just as one example. Yeah, and they're indigenous shamans. It's personal experience I had. So yeah, this is what I would say. And also I think in introduction, I don't think I would ever call myself shaman, and even here I just like to reiterate the idea that ultimately we all have the same access in a way. The question is always only how clean is our vessel, how free are we of judgment, and how filled are we with self-love to be able to access, or consciously recognize the synchronicity, the insight, the intuition, the connectedness, the knowledge, whatever it would be. So, and also, as I said before, you're never let off the hook. So even if you would believe, oh, I found the great shaman, I'm learning all of these things through them. Of course, also, I would be very grateful to someone. But ultimately, it is always you yourself individually who is making any progress, any transformation, any understanding. All that anybody else even does, no matter how grand they seem, is offer a particular frequency, is offer a particular idea, but it's always up to the receiver to synthesize it. And in this way also we can be most, self-empowered in then sharing these things again, and not creating artificial divisions, even though in many different ways also I would agree there's people with more knowledge in certain areas, maybe particularly high empathy or skill set for something, however that comes about. Yeah. So yeah, I can't really talk to the whole pop culture side of it. I think it all comes down probably in the end to authenticity. And even here I would wonder, to what degree is it chosen, like my personality or even my skill set? Or to what degree have I earned this in my life? Or have I only fleshed out something which is more what I feel like, of like I always see it like a role-playing game. You play a role-playing game, you set strength settings and so on, particular.
Right. What your character is, druid.
It feels more like I'm more discovering my character sheet and playing to my strengths. That is the actual development I made, and not so much that I achieved or so much improved on any of.
So it's almost I love what you're saying.
Potential rather than an amassing.
Right. No, I love what you're saying, because I feel like a shaman is not necessarily something that you are. It's almost like a philosophy, right? That you're always trying to kind of know more, and that would be weird. Like, what would actually qualify you to be a shaman? Like, but it's not really. It's just a lifestyle. It's just a kind of a combination of a curiosity and knowledge, I guess.
Maybe, and then potentially just relating to the word, ideally, great empathy, and of course a skill to relay those realms which other people have cordoned off from themselves, and to show them, look, it's not so scary. You can open the door. You can go yourself. I'll hold your hand, whether it's mental concepts or a spiritual psychedelic experience or anything like that.
Right.
Maybe that would be a way, someone who can not really, but in a way hold your hand, or at least let you know you're not alone, or at least let you know, yes, you can do alone, you can do it, just keep breathing,
So, I think we all do need that. We do need that sometimes. I've got my favorite new viewers here chatting it up. The True Life podcast is asking, what are some of your favorite books that you would recommend? which I think is probably a great question. You could probably go on for 20 minutes listing them, but what are the top 5, let's say, that pop into your head that have really affected you?
Okay, so
Or 3. Let's go with 3. I don't want to.
Okay. So I'll drop the bombshell just now, and this is something I'm still researching properly. So everyone could go to my channel, check out the interviews. So on number 1 right now, I'd have to put the Quran.
Okay. No, that's
I
totally
had
valid.
never done research and recently discovered a few things about it that are incredibly revelatory.
I've heard that, actually.
We would have all kind of worldly books I could mention. One book I recently spoke of that I enjoyed was The Starfish and the Spider by Rod Backstrom. It's about organizational theory. Whether the story is exactly true like that or not, but I think it's a great model because it really explains the difference between centralized and distributed hierarchies. And I feel this is also the real playing field we're at, whether we go more towards centralization or distribution, and this can be applied to almost anything. So it's, I think, a really great guideline to decode political systems and ideas and economics and so on, and just see, does it further more centralization or more distribution? And then to add on a third one that also relates to the same topic, I would choose Frank Herbert's Dune, which is officially a science fiction book. Maybe I brought it up before, but in my understanding now, potentially even contains hidden and occulted history and many, many other things. And it's just a great book. There's even recent movies. The most recent one I didn't even enjoy so much. I like the older ones more. Especially there's a miniseries called Children of Dune I can recommend. So yeah, let's go for Dune.
No, dude, I love that. Those are perfect, and I love, dude. You're. I mean, we're already at an hour, so we got to start wrapping up shortly. But I know it was 4 a.m. where you are. I appreciate it so much. You don't know how much I appreciate you being here and having this conversation with us. But we have a question from the Q for You podcast. Would a moment of serendipity be a synchronicity, or are those two different things? That's kind of a good question. I like that question.
Then in this case, just to be exact, serendipity, because I know the term, but I want to see what
I love the way you work, Raphael. You're like, I'm not going to answer this question until I know I'm equipped to answer this question. Let me. I love that. That's great.
Okay, an unplanned fortunate discovery. And then it says serendipity is a common occurrence throughout the history of product invention and scientific discovery, or that is what they say on Wikipedia, at least. In this way, I would relate it in a sense that yes, basically yes. In terms of synchronicity, would be something you do not logically have to plan out for, but it's more of a frequency state and openness, self-love. And then you automatically attract anything that is necessary. And this could then be translated as a serendipity in your research or in your work, which something may have taken you an entire day. And suddenly someone's calling, the situation is resolved in 5 minutes, only because you love yourself so much that you say, it's okay. I don't need my big ego in terms of having it solved, I'd really rather, do something else today. And then these things can happen. So, yeah.
Totally. Great answer. And True Life is saying, beautiful. I'm reminded of the Sufi mystics and their poetry when I hear about the Quran. So George is very much, you would love George, and George would love you. And dude, I love you. I feel like we haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg. Like, we've only hit the tip of the iceberg in the conversation we can have. But I do want
I don't know how you managed to only do 1 hour shows, but
well, you know what, because I feel like I'm ready to receive more. I should probably visit it, and I've started to watch some of your stuff. I'm ready to receive more, but I feel like you got to kind of play to the lowest common denominator sometimes. And I mean, we do some of the podcasts I do at work at the studio. They're 20-minute episodes, and that's because that's what people are consuming. I mean, I know, Joe Rogan kind of invented this long form content, and then now it's the short form content. We're all just figuring it out, but I could certainly.
No, it's perfect. I love it. I'm just saying I'm impressed. I couldn't manage with always only doing 1 hour shows.
I just look at the time. Plus now that it's summer, I got to turn off my AC, and I'm just dying of sweat. I got to turn it back on because it just makes too much noise. But you have been longer. True Life. George wanted to keep going. George, I love your energy on your show. You're kind of an example. When I started watching your show, George, the way you're just so ramped up at your intros, and you're like, "Hey, everybody, I'm here." It's like that's how I want to be, but I got to be authentic. I mean, I'm excited to be here. I think I do all right on my intro, but anyway, George, I would love to go longer, but it's definitely time to go to bed. Raphael's up way past his bedtime. What is it now? Where you are, Raphael? 5
Well,
o'clock.
bedtime is another story. It's 4
Bedtime.
a.m. now.
Sleep is a whole different concept that you play with sometimes, I would imagine, right? And Q for U's out there. I just have to give viewers a taste so they can uncover their own truths. Exactly. I feel like I think a lot of people need to really start kind of being accountable for learning this stuff. And you can't just sit there and be told it. You've got to really experience it and process it through your own filters and, redefine it, right? I mean, I think everybody's got to kind of run it. Julie's out there. Love you, Raphael. Thank you. Ninja Kitty is thanking you as well. I'm thanking you from the heart and hoping that you'll do this again. I don't know. I mean, I guess, you tell me when your sleep schedules allow for it, or you're not sleeping. And
we'll just do it. It'll be fine.
You can find Raphael at, that's Raphael on YouTube and I guess most of the platforms. Thanking everybody out there. Let me put you backstage for a minute and
thank you so much, Michael.
And
thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah, thanks for being here, man. Wow, I don't know if I'm going to sleep tonight. I got so much germination happening in my brain right now. I can feel it tingling in my head. Raphael is amazing. I hope you guys enjoyed him. I will definitely have him back. The guys that I was talking about, by the way, from the StreamYard collab, George on the True Life podcast and the Q for You podcast, are my next couple of weeks guests. So super exciting. Next week I will have George on my show, and the following week the Q for You guys, who are right there. Boop, boop, boop. I got to get used to the whole fact that this is a mirror, so it's that thing right there. But yeah, I'm excited. I actually may have on my show Nitro from the American Gladiators. I don't know if you guys have seen the Muscle Mayhem special on Netflix, but it was pretty awesome. And Nitro went from a roid raging party boy to a spiritual yogi. And I reached out to him, and he said he would love to be on the show, but he's got to pass it through Netflix first. So he's kind of probably in a contract or something, which is fine with me. If he passes it through Netflix and they say come on the show, you'll see him here. I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate you for being here all the time. Thank you so much. And I will see you next week. I got to go turn on my air conditioning. I'm going to run the old outro, and peace. I will see you next week.